This is the Shanling Q2, and it's a pretty good DAP. So let's talk about it. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a review on the Shanling Q2 DAP. Often the case when it comes to DAPs, my top recommendation has always been the Shanling M1 Plus. Despite a lot of flaws that it has, despite a lot of issues that I personally have griped against it, especially the battery life, I still ranked it as the top pick for DAPs, regardless of all the choice that I have. Ironically, it's also the one that I sold off. So the ones that are remaining with me right now that I'm using it quite actively are the Hebe R3 Mark II and as well as the Hyde's AP80 Pro Max. So these are the two devices that I used very often. In fact, I've been using the AP80 for my daily driver for most of the time until they announced the Q2. So this is actually the Q2. It's very new. As you can see, fellow boomers out there, you will find it's very familiar design. It's an old iPod design, but way smaller. It's way smaller. So as usual, the usual iPod is about a palm size different. But this is different, right? And this thing doesn't run on Android OS. It runs on a proprietary Shanling OS, which is not so bad. But let me get into the details later about what are the pros and cons of running the OS as well as the navigating system, the UI UX experience on these things. But yeah, let's talk about the physical aspect on this device first. First of all, this device is fairly small compared to the AP80 Pro Max, as you can see here. It's about the same height, maybe a little bit shorter. As for the width, it's identical. It's identical. You can see cover is right behind it. It's identical in terms of the width size. Thickness wise, I think it's also very similar. I would assume, yeah, it's slightly thicker than the AP80 Pro Max. Slightly, ever so slightly. But that's not a big problem. This is extremely pocketable and it's very capable, to my surprise. It's able to drive my Hi-Fi Man Edition XS and with high gain set to about 60% volume, which is quite ridiculous, to be honest, when it comes to this kind of a device. As you can see here, this dial works as a volume adjuster. It's very quick to respond as well. However, the dial itself only functions as a volume dial. It is not able to reprogram it to, let's say, scroll the tracks, unlike in previous iPods. It feels a lot more gimmicky rather than actually being functional. Aside from that, the touchscreen, according to my experience, there are times where the touchscreen is just completely not responsive, especially at the corner areas. Maybe it's because of the firmware or something, but about 80% of the time, I think you can get by no problem. Right now, I'm trying to replicate the problem. It doesn't happen, but yeah, it did happen to me a few times when I was testing out this device last night. Aside from that, this is a very minimalistic design. So it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles around, no buttons, no any kind of a interaction point aside from the bottom ports and whatnot. Anything around it, behind it, there is nothing for you to press. On-off button is right in the middle on this thing. So as you can see just now when I was, okay, so off it. And yeah, it's really quite quick when it comes to turning this device on. Aside from that, whatever you do to the scroll wheel is basically just for volume. You can't scroll the menu, you can't do anything. In terms of the navigations and utility and how you actually functions, how you actually use this device, there's a combination of buttons as well as the touchscreen. So fortunately, the touchscreen works to a certain extent, well, most of the extent. So it's quite responsive, it's quite decent, and you can still press the physical button if you want. So let's say, for example, you go into one of the menu and then you want to go back. I think you still can click back. You can still click next track and whatever, not play, pause, whatever, all these things there. That's a good thing. The physical button still works. I mean, the satisfying thing about it is that, I'm not sure you can hear it, but yeah, so there's the clicky sound whenever you click or when you scroll the volume wheel. And ironically, it only the volume wheel only adjusts at 1% of the volume at a time, which is quite slow. And you can't accelerate the scrolling. I hope that they can actually implement a little bit more changes to the UI, but for now I think it works fairly well. So aside from that, I think in terms of the weight as well as the feel in hand, honestly it's quite disappointing. Maybe this is just a common case across Shanling, because I recall the M1 Plus does feel a little bit more hollow as well inside. When you pick this thing up, it doesn't have the premium feeling unlike the AP80 Pro Max. You pick this up, it felt very weighty, it felt very full, it felt like a brick. This thing felt more like a case, it felt more like a chassis. And not sure you can hear. It felt a little bit hollow inside, it feels like a toy. It really does feel like a toy. It felt very, very light. Well, I did mention that the AP80 Pro Max does felt a lot more premium. As you can see here, this thing weighs about 82, 83 grams. And compared to that, the AP80 Pro Max weighs about 5 grams heavier. So it's like 88 grams. What about we have the R3 2, 121. What about the Core 99? Lighter doesn't mean better. That 5 grams seems to make a lot of difference. It felt cheap. So I think the ideal weight for device such as this is probably gonna be here, and like just stick to 90. I think that's good. I'm not sure you can hear from here, but even when you put it down, it felt hollow. At least this thing is like, it's like a brick. This one too. Unlike a lot of my other portable DAPs out there, this thing runs a quad DAC for the Cirrus Logic CS43131. It's pretty amazing for a device this size. And considering that the battery capacity is only about 1008 compared to its previous M1 Plus, that has a 2100 mAh battery. But that thing only lasts about 8.5 hours, and whereas this thing lasts about 13.5 hours. Personally, this thing solved a lot of my problem I had with the M1 Plus. But I'll go into the sound quality later. There are some big trade-off from there. In any case, from what I see from the specs here, it's actually a pretty solid device. The only downside I have when it comes to actual specs is that the Bluetooth uses a 5.1 Bluetooth. In any case, it's still a pretty decent and reliable Bluetooth signal. I've been testing it today on the rail subways and underground passes. I never experienced a single static or breakups aside from the initial connection part. Okay, while the Q2 is actually a pretty good device, it's not exactly all rainbows and sunshines everywhere. I have big issues about the way how it sorts the song, as well as the way how you search for tracks. So like for example, when you see the tracks that I have here, currently it's being sorted by alphabetical order. However, the way how it recognizes the title, if it's not in English, it will recognize the alphabet or the kanji title as Chinese pronunciation instead. So it will recognize, like for example, let me search up one. This is a good one. Like for example, in this particular track, this is actually a Japanese title called Haruyo Koi. So Haruyo Koi, initial alphabet here is Haru, which is H, but it's being positioned in C, Y. It's because the Chinese pronunciation of this is called Chun. Then the second letter is actually in Japanese, so it will not regard the second letter, it will only read the first letter. So the first letter is called Chun instead of Haru in Japanese. This device will recognize it this way, it will read it off on that, and it will sort it into the entire library based on the Chinese pronunciation. That is causing quite a bit of a problem. So I'm not sure how you can sort this out, but even if you select the language to Chinese or Japanese, it still has the same freaking problem. Here's another one. So this in Japanese is called Miji, but in Chinese it's called Dao. So Dao obviously is D. D-A-O, it goes in between these few ones. So Miji, the proper pronunciation for this Japanese song, it should be below, it should be M. So that's the issue. It doesn't really affect much if you are well versed in both Japanese and Chinese, but if you're not, then yes, you will have a lot of trouble trying to search through your tracks. Having to, I don't know how to memorize the position on this thing. Unless you will translate it into Romanji, then that might work. But aside from that, there is no prior solution to this at all. The way how this sort here, the sorting options is also pretty hideous. So as you can see, they only got these few options that it has, right? Alphabetical and file name. File name, which I have no idea what the fuck that is. I will assume it's sorted according to numeric in front of their title. So maybe it's sort to based on that, but I think this is the most practical one that I can use at the moment, which is alphabetical. So yeah, that's one of the biggest gripe I have about this kind of device. It kind of is similar for the other Hebe OS as well, but fortunately for us, at least after a bit of tinkling, the tracks is able to at least sort out all the English recognizable titles on top, and then the Chinese kanji followed by next one, and lastly it follows by hiragana and katakana on the last one. So at the very least, I'm able to kind of memorize where the track is and go to it. Next, searching for songs in this device is actually quite a hideous task to do so if your song is not in English. It can do a bit of a search in Chinese, but I think that's really it. Like for example, let's say for example I want to search Senyai, but I know the device can only recognize Senyai as a 千叶, so I can't type Sen. I have to type Q-I-A-N. Oops, wait, I need to switch language. Q-I-A-N. So then it shows whatever combination that it has on this thing, which we're gonna press send. This is send for you. I want to focus, damn it. Then when you enter, it will show Senyai. So that's the issue. Even if you switch language, like say for example, you switch to Japanese, voila, you can't type Japanese. So hiragana, katakana, out. You can't do shit. You can't search it at all. So the language there is simply just for navigation. It doesn't really do localizations on any of this at all. And a lot of like some of the language translations, so it's very half-baked. Streaming, like, come on, man. You can fucking type in hiragana or katakana or whatever the fuck it is. And as much as they can, they try to use kanji instead of like hiragana and katakana. I have no idea why. Man, it's really quite low effort when it comes to this. But fortunately, it is a language. The English one works. So bear in mind, if you're, if you plan to use this device for other languages, do buy it at your own risk. The localization wasn't done properly on this. For connectivity, this thing does dual band. It does a two-way Bluetooth as well. It does have Wi-Fi, it does support AirPlay, it does support DLNA. And for music streaming services, currently it has only Tidal as well as this Baidu NetDisc thing. So yeah, I mean, it's fine. It's quite decent. Don't expect too much out of it. I think if you want to have more variety of streaming services, you might want to get a device with Android OS instead. And briefly, I just touched on just now, this thing runs on a Bluetooth 5.2. Supporting codecs, it has its SBC, AAC, aptX, aptX HD, as well as LDAC. In terms of other connectivity, of course, it has a Type-C, and it does comes with the 4.4 Pentacon as well as the 3.5mm. It's quite a standard set for a lot of other portable DAPs out there. Aside from that, this thing also functions as a USB DAC. So if you're going to use this for plug into your computer, turn this thing to a sound card, I mean, it works as well. So as previously mentioned, in my battery stress test, I managed to get about 13.5 hours. And that test was conducted using a 3.5mm Ziggard Estrella. The gain is set to low, and the volume is set to 40%. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is also turned off. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the sound impression that I have for this device. There are some descriptive words that I'll be throwing out that I feel that represents my impression when I'm testing this. It sounded very rich, very warm and smooth, and it's very laid back. The bass itself is quite well extended, is very full, and at the same time very well balanced. However, the soundstage is the part where I think this device is quite lacking in. The trade-off here is that instead of sounding very wide and very crisp, it sounded a lot more intimate. It sounded a lot more like the vocals and the instruments are more closer to you. There's a part where you feel less fatigue when you're listening to a song for a longer period of time. I think this device is a better fit for that. There's quite an evident drop-off in the highs when you're listening to some of the tracks with more sibilants, which is, once again, it's actually a good thing that you don't get more on the ear fatigues whenever listening to this device with such characteristics, right? So it's not exactly a particularly bad sound, especially when it comes to instrument separation. This thing does pretty well. Still feels like a proper hi-fi device, but it just doesn't have that kind of characteristics for a lot of other typical hi-fi devices have. Especially nowadays, where a lot of hi-fi devices tend to focus too much on the clarity and too much on the crispiness of notes. So this thing felt a little bit more different. It felt like a break. It felt like a, just sit back on your couch, listen to tracks, and just sleep on it. So this is the kind of device that it gives me this impression on. As for the tracks that I used to test it with, is Utada Hikaru's Beautiful World, the 2021 remix. You can try out these tracks on several other devices that I have. It's very pronounced difference, especially when it comes to the vocal part. You can clearly hear that this device felt a lot more warm. Next one, of course, I used Sawano Hiroyuki's Inferno, sung by Benjamin and MPI. So that was a very popular track and also one of my favorite tracks that I use, especially for male vocals, and it's a very deep voice. So it's quite amazing when this thing is able to replicate the way how the song is being played. Compare this to the AP80 Pro Max. Sometimes when it comes to male vocal, it gets a little bit overpowered by the instruments on the AP80 Pro Max. But for some reason, the Q2 is able to balance the vocals as well as the instruments, so that your attention span doesn't get distracted by the instruments. You still can focus throughout the entire track on the vocals, the instruments, and the entire harmonizations of the song. Next one, I tried the Requiem of Dreams, played by Jennifer Thomas. It's basically just a pure instrument track. There's no vocal on there. Emphasis on the piano. It's an amazing soundtrack, and this is where I think this device kind of shines a little bit more compared to its competitor. So what happened here is at 2 minutes and 43 mark, that's where the burst into chorus starts. The AP80 Pro Max, while it does sound good, it felt a little lackluster when you compare to this. This thing just felt full. The immediate word that came to your mind when you're listening to the 2 minutes and 43 mark is full. The burst felt full. The chorus felt complete. The chorus felt smack right in your face. Whereas the AP80 Pro Max, it felt like a smoother transition, but it doesn't feel like a chorus. It doesn't give you the attention. It doesn't get your heart pumping. So that's the difference there. A big difference when it comes to this kind of soundtracks. Lastly, I tried one of the tracks that has a very, very high bitrate, which is Lens by Ikura. So Lens was one of my favorite tracks that I used to test a lot of DAPs and sound for headphones, DAPs, whatever it is. Most of the time I use that track. That track has a lot of clarity, has a lot of instruments that needed very clear separations. Otherwise, you get messed up quite easily. So Lens was very well replicated this way. From what I mentioned earlier when I said that this device is very good at separating each of the instruments as well as each of the notes. So using Lens as the track, I'm able to fully confirm the fact that this thing is able to do so perfectly fine. Right, so here comes the verdict, right? Will the Shanling Q2 dethrone the Shanling M1 Plus as my topic for the best recommended portable DAPs? I think it's extremely hard to say. Both has its own flaw, and these flaws are actually something that I cannot accept with. If you prefer a lot more laid back and you're the type that listen to a lot more longer hours, then I think yes, the Q2 is an excellent pick over the Shanling M1 Plus. However, when it comes to sound fidelity wise, I still think the ESS chips on the M1 Plus is far superior. If you're listening for analytical and more for precision wise, then I think yeah, the M1 Plus tends to be a better choice. But if you want more enjoyable and more casual listening experience, I think this is a very interesting device. Along with the gimmicky and nostalgia feel, I think that's where the selling point of this device is. In my own personal ranking, yes, this thing does takes over the M1 Plus. Comes to the choice whether or not will I sell this away and get another M1 Plus. I think my choice is with keeping this device over buying another M1 Plus. I think main differentiating factor here is of course the 5-hour difference battery life. At the same time, I do like that volume scroll wheel. and having a very simplified outlook on this thing. Despite a lot of flaws as well as a lot of points about this device, I still do think that it's a very enjoyable player to have. Compared to my other fews that I'm using on a daily basis, although I do think that the price of like 250-ish on this thing is a little too steep. If you manage to get this device for like under $200, I think it's quite a good bargain. That said, I think Shanling, it does not disappoint when it comes to sound quality. This is just a different flavor from it. Build quality wise, debatable, but in overall user experience and whatnot, Shanling always has this keep it 80-90% and just don't want to go all the way at 100% kind of issue. With that, I think that's my review. If you find it enjoyable, if you find it meaningful, please like and subscribe. Be sure to tune in for more. Bye bye.